Good morning. I do want to welcome everybody to this power session, this Beam Business Service power session called Emotions, Friend or Foe. And I just want to give a shout out this morning to start with to the Portsmouth Chamber of Commerce. Lisa is with us this morning, so just thankful for their sponsorship and their promotion of this. The Ashland Alliance, the Ohio University Southern, and the Maysville Chamber of Commerce are all sponsors. What does it mean to be a sponsor? They support this, they promote it, and we're just glad as a team to really be giving back some quality programs to the community and to help people out. So we're going to talk about how to lighten up and manage your feelings. Feelings and emotions are an odd thing, and they cause a lot of trouble for people in the workplace and even in personal lives, of course. And I just want to give you some practical things by the time we get done today on how to better manage your emotions and actually appreciate them and use them and be a better person overall. That's what coaching is about. It's what I do. And so let's get started here. That is me. I've been married for 35 years to a wonderful woman, Connie. We love each other and we really enjoy each other's company. I am the self-proclaimed granddaddy of all granddaddies. We now have an Alexa device where our granddaughter calls us regularly from North Carolina, and the others chime in. And we have some older grandchildren in the area, so I do my best to hold that title up high. I love to play my Tyros keyboard, Tyros 5 keyboard. It's my escape and my way of just doing something totally different, a little bit right-brained. We'll learn a little bit about that today. I am the owner of Beam Business Services for the past 18 years. We used to be an Action Coach franchise. I'm now independent. And in that process, I'm a mentor, a trainer, and a speaker. Help people with personal issues as well as organizations with leadership and communication issues. An ACBC counselor. What is that? For 20 years at Wheelersburg Baptist Church, we've been providing biblical counseling training and counseling. If you want more information on that, I would be glad to set up a conversation with you. And overall, if you just want to pull all this together, I have a passion to help other people. And this is the way I do it. And I love what I do. I enjoy what I do. I hope it comes through really clearly and plainly in the presentation. So let's want to talk a little bit about further opportunities that you can have with my company and with me if you're interested. We have these events coming up the first week of every month for the rest of the year. At least that's planned right now. And just tune in and sign up on the website to get those. The past events that we have had since March or so or April of last year, we have actually been recording those, and the links to those are on YouTube. The YouTube links to those are on the website as well. That's at no cost to you. I think that's a great resource. 50-minute to 1-hour presentations like this on a variety of topics. Encourage you to check that out. On that same website, I have a library of close to 200 articles on various business and personal issues. Those articles are produced new every week on Monday. If you want to sign up for that, usually less than 300 word article, that's what that's about. I have some paid mastermind groups, group of people that get together and just brainstorm how to solve problems and issues, business and personal, and even community issues. We've been having some great meetings this year. I do executive mentoring, leadership management, and training for organizations. Really work with teams and usually middle management and upper management team members to learn skill sets and mindsets. And again, today's content is kind of coming from that place. And for more information, there is the website, www.mentordavebeam.com. Go there and just explore it, have fun. If you want some more information and want to speak with me, the best way to get a hold of me is to email me, davebeam@mentordavebeam.com, and the phone number 740-464-0825. If you must text or call, you can certainly do that, but email is my preferred way. So with that said, let's jump into this morning's material. I always love to start with the rules of the game. If you come to these events, you're going to see these most often. And the first thing you're agreeing to today to get the most out of today is this rule. I agree to embrace an ownership mindset. I can't tell you again how important that is for this particular topic. Most people do not believe that they can own their emotions. They believe their emotions own them. In other words, they feel like they can't really do anything about their feelings. If I have a mood, if I have a way of feeling, if I'm down, if even I'm up, I really don't control that. It almost feels automatic. And what I want you to do is in your mindset today to say, at least be curious and say, could I own that process? Could I control that process? Secondly, I want you to learn how to participate 100%. That just means that you're going to fully engage with today. You're going to maybe take some notes, and you're not going to multitask. You're going to just be here and be very present. You're going to drop an I know. Boy, when we're talking about emotions, this one is tough because emotions are very real to people, and they feel when a child is afraid of something, they know that threat is real, even that monster under the bed is real, and it may not be. And when we're dealing with people's past hurts and we're dealing with their past regrets and their past fears, it can sometimes almost be tangible. And to try to convince a person or try to reason with a person that that's not real is a difficult thing to do. So I'm asking you this morning to reason with yourself. I'm not going to try to promote this from me to you, and just for you to slow this whole thing down and say, I'm going to get rid of my I know. I'm going to come into this thing curious and open-minded and wondering about what could happen. How could I improve? How could my team improve? How could my leadership improve? How could my relationships improve? And then if we do all that, if we own it, if we participate, and we come in curious, we're going to have a lot of fun this morning. So that's the goal. So I just want you to take a moment, think through those, and in your own way and in your own minded thinking, commit to having that ownership mindset, fully 100% participating with the event, getting rid of those past prejudices and I knows, and just being curious and finding this interesting this morning. And through all of that, let's just lighten it up and have some fun. In a fun, interested, curious mindset, our curious mind, our curious brain kicks in, and we're going to be a whole lot more effective and move forward a lot faster. So that's why we have those rules, and I think they're great rules of the game for life, but they certainly work for these events. So with that said, fasten your seatbelt. Here we go. I love to start with questions. If I was with you in a group meeting and we were standing and sitting together, I would ask you, what do you want out of this session on emotions, friend or foe? And I'm going to give you some questions since I'm presenting today, but I would want you to give me some questions. Here are the questions I would like to get answered today. Here are some questions that we're going to attempt to answer today, or at least give some thought about and move this direction. The first one is, I want to ask you this question. Do you currently consider your emotions and your feelings more as a friend or as a foe? Are they your enemy, or are they somebody that you welcome? And you think about your feelings. How do you relate to your feelings? Do you like them? Do you consider them friend, or do you consider them an enemy, a foe? So here's a follow-up question to that. What are some ways that maybe you could manage your emotions and make them a better friend? How could they become useful and helpful? I believe we're going to give you some real strong ways that that can absolutely happen. Third, what are emotions? Where in the world do they come from? And what is the relationship of my emotions to my thinking and my actions and my results? I'm a coach. I'm about results. I love to talk about emotions because it helps people. I love to have that passion to help people, but I help people with a purpose in my business, and that's so they can get a better result. How can you get a better result as a leader, as a manager, as a team member, as an employee? And how do emotions play into that? We're going to see that today as well. Fourth, what is emotional intelligence? And how can you increase yours to be a better leader, manager, employer, spouse, parent, and person? We're going to look at a little bit of the research by Daniel Coleman and practical side of it. It's going to be, I think, helpful. And how can I better manage my moods? How can you manage your moods? What are some practical tools and techniques to deal with negative emotions, things like depression and anxiety and pessimism and apathy and stress and anger and overwhelm and distraction and fear? All those things in our heads and in our bodies just tend to war against us and bring us down. What can we do about it? We're going to talk about that today. And finally, kind of the opposite side of that coin, how can we increase our happiness, our optimism, our inner peace, our motivation, our energy, our engagement, and basically consistently be a kinder person that can be a positive influence and a contributor in our businesses and in our life roles? So I want to give you a moment here as you look through those to just kind of reprocess some of those questions. Look back there on the screen and read through them. And what we're doing is we're just preparing your mind to be open and to look for some answers today as we go through this together. Just give me a moment there. Okay, with those questions in mind, let's look at this idea of emotional intelligence by Daniel Coleman. He has a classic book now that was written about, I think, about 15 years ago, called Working with Emotional Intelligence. And if you're the reading type person and you like more information, I highly recommend the book. I'll give you the basically outline of the book. It first of all talks about personal competence. So whenever we're going to work with developing teams and leaders and people, we're looking at the team and we're looking at the individual. We want to start with the individual, and this book is set up that way as well. We want to look at personal competence, and that consists of these three things, according to Daniel Coleman: self-awareness, self-regulation, and motivation. These are competencies that determine how well we manage ourselves. Self-awareness is knowing my own internal state, my resources, and my intuitions. It includes things like emotionally being aware and having an accurate self-assessment and being self-confident. The second piece of personal competence is self-regulation. This includes things like self-control, trustworthiness, conscientiousness, adaptability, and innovation. And the third is motivation. Probably one of those questions I get quite often as a coach is, how can I be more motivated? How can my team be more motivated? Mr. Coleman describes that as emotional tendencies that guide or facilitate reaching goals. We're trying to get results and goals. This is an issue of emotional personal competence. These are the emotional tendencies that guide or facilitate reaching those goals. It would include things like achievement drive, commitment, initiative, and optimism. Such important things. So again, I love words. I think the more we understand words, it's like a great artist when he has a lot of different colors and he's got names for those colors, he can really be a better artist. I think as leaders, as thought leaders, as people that are helping other people think more clearly, a lot of words can sometimes help if we slow it down. So that's what I like about these kinds of books, is they help us put some words and definitions around concepts. So we're talking, first of all, here, and the emotional intelligence is personal competence, and then you can guess the next one is social competence. These competencies determine how we handle relationships. Mr. Coleman gives us two: empathy, which is the awareness of others' feelings, needs, and concerns, and then a whole set of social skills that is just adeptness at inducing desirable responses in others. Again, very academic book, not a lot of practicality right now, but I think great foundational material for what we're going to be talking about today. Empathy is about understanding others, developing others, having a service orientation, leveraging diversity, and a political awareness. How does my environment work politically? And then social skills, things like influence, communication, conflict management, leadership, being a change catalyst, building bonds, collaborating, and team capability. Now, at the end, one of the offers I'm going to give you, free offer, is to send you that emotional competence framework outline that I've just read to you, basically. If you want that, be glad to send it to you. Let's move on to something a little more exciting, even though I love that basic information. Let's talk about your brain. Your rational and your emotional brain. We're going to give you a little bit of a neuroscience this morning, because if we're going to understand emotions, I really think we need to understand a little bit about our brain. It's 3 pounds of the most amazing system known to man and to the universe, our biocomputer. 3 pounds of nerves and chemical processing that occurs between our ears. And it's just, the more I read about this and the more I understand about this, the more I'm amazed at it. So I want you to look here at the picture, and on the left-hand side, first of all, you're going to see that upper brain, or if you took the skull off the top and looked at the brain, this is what you would see, this thing that looks like a walnut. And it consists of these lobes: the frontal lobe, the parietal lobe, the temporal lobe, the occipital lobe. And each of those lobes are processing lobes. And the prefrontal cortex is at the very front of the frontal lobe, and that's the part that makes us human. That's called the CEO of the brain. It's where reasoning and logic and emotional regulation occurs, impulse control, learning from mistakes, forethought, judgment, dreaming, focus. All that's in that prefrontal cortex. And folks, what we're going to learn today is we need to learn how, that is under our control. We can direct that prefrontal cortex. And this is how we can learn how to rule over our emotions and actually make the emotions our friend. So that prefrontal cortex, that CEO of the body, is right there. And the frontal cortex, which is the rest of that frontal lobe, really controls the movements and the planning of those movements. Then you've got some more automatic processing that occurs in these lobes. If you look at the others, the occipital lobe in the back is visual processing. The parietal lobe covers the sense of touch, feeling, pain. The temporal lobe on the side is the auditory processor, and there's memory functions that go on there. And then the brainstem down there, the medulla oblongata, is where you have some basic automatic processes such as heartbeat. And I just want you to get familiar a little bit with the fact that these emotions that we're talking about today, they're created and they're produced in the brain. They're electrical and chemical processes. And that emotional processing, as we move to the right diagram, is in the limbic system. And it's underneath, as you see, it's kind of colored. It's underneath that upper cortex. And here you have the amygdala. You're going to hear that phrase occasionally if you talk about the biology and this kind of thing. That's where the center of the limbic system is. The hippocampus is on the side of that amygdala. That's where we have some long-term memory. The thalamus is a very interesting piece of that limbic system. That's actually the switchboard where all this stimulation, visual stimulation, auditory stimulation, sensation and of touch, all comes in here first, and it's processed, and this switchboard sends it to the appropriate place. And then the hypothalamus is the primal urge place. Those sexual intensities and those hunger and thirst intensities, those basic survival human intense urges are there in that hypothalamus. There are other systems within this brain. We have just touched the very surface that regulate attention, that regulate sleep, that regulate consciousness. You've got a left and right brain that has various ways of working. And what is my point? My point is, if we're going to understand our emotions and how to deal effectively with our emotions and develop our emotional and our emotional competence and our emotional intelligence, we need to understand that it's a biological process. It's something that the way we are formed and created is we can change this. It's called brain plasticity. And I wanted to just give you kind of an introduction to that today. So let's move on to something even more interesting. You've noticed the emotional intelligence phrases are listed here on this piece of paper. And as what's coming in here is something I'll also send you so you can take a closer look at it. And we're certainly not going to go through every one of these, but this is what I call the emotion wheel. And if you look at this, it's really interesting. If you look at the center, we've got the basic emotions that we're talking about. And this particular model divides it into happy, sad, disgusted, angry, fearful, bad, and surprised. You're saying, great, Dave, how do I use this thing? Well, if we're going to improve something, we need to understand it. And I think to understand things, we need to have words that express them. So when I'm trying to express how I feel, I may use a basic word like I'm angry. But if you look at this, if you look at the anger slice of the pie there at the top, you can move up towards the top of that and see that there are many subtle words that describe anger. Everything from sarcasm to embarrassment, devastation, enraged, furious, provoked, hostile, infuriated, irritated, withdrawn. There are so many different expressions of anger. And this wheel does this for these 6 primary emotions. And all this does for you is it helps you process emotional feelings. Feelings are so hard to describe. I worked with a coach for a while, and she sent me this wheel to help me. She said, when we become more conscious and more aware of what we're actually feeling, we can sometimes reason through that and use that prefrontal cortex to better process and analyze and think about our emotions. But so many people don't have a very good emotional vocabulary. I certainly didn't. And as a coach and as I've helped people, we develop and really try to understand exactly what is the feeling or the feelings that you're experiencing. We can help to get this more into an objective place where we can work on it and we can shift it and we can even challenge it and see if it's all legitimate, and also maybe determine where some of it's coming from. So again, just another tool I wanted to share with you as we move towards the meat of the meeting this morning, and that's where we're going right now. So again, if you'll just send me an email, we'll send you this out as a PDF. Emotions, they work like indicator lights. You're driving down the road, and all of a sudden that light comes on in your car. It's one of these little indicator lights nowadays. That would be your check engine light comes on. What's that telling you? It's not telling you very much, but it is telling you that something is going on. Here's what I want you to get from this little slide. When I'm feeling a certain way, or I'm working with somebody who's feeling a certain way, that's an indicator light. It's an indicator light that is electrically connected to something that is occurring within that piece of equipment, that car. If my engine's overheating, it's going to send a signal to that light, and that light is going to indicate that's what's going on. When we talk to people about their emotional state, or when we're really sitting and working with ourselves, if I'm having a certain emotion, that's an indicator to me that something is going on inside of me. There's some processing, some kind of thinking, some kind of thought, some kind of consciousness, some kind of awareness that I'm having that's creating this light. Now, I can get all hung up on the light and try to treat the light and try to put on sunglasses or try to cut the wire to the light, but that's not going back to understand what the source is. And here's where we can make emotions our friend versus our enemy. Some people don't like the light. Sometimes they get upset with how they're feeling. They get too focused over in the subjective side instead of backing up objectively and saying, where is this coming from? Why am I feeling this way? Why am I feeling so great today? What is it that contributed to that? Why am I feeling so down today? And that's what we're going to look at now is I want you to understand, if you start to understand this, it starts to bring some real excitement into our meeting. Can I make emotions my friend? Can I have some influence and control? Can I own my emotions? Absolutely. And the first thing to do is, once you get a label for them, we had all that on the wheel. Now I need to understand each of those lights. What are they indicating? What's going on? So what I want you to do is I want you to go to the grocery store with me, and we're going to walk down the aisle together. This is a kind of a shift here. We're going to walk down the aisle together, and I want you to just kind of picture this in your mind. If you need to shut your eyes to kind of imagine that, that would be great. And I'm going to take you over to the fruit and vegetable aisle, over with the fruits. And I brought a pocket knife with me, and I'm going to pick up this beautiful yellow lemon, and I'm going to take that knife, and I'm going to slowly cut and carve through that lemon, and I'm going to go down through it, and that juice is going to run down my hand a little bit, and I'm going to split that lemon apart, and then we're going to bring that lemon right up to our mouth, and we're going to just take a nice big bite out of that lemon. Can you see that? Can you feel that? Can you sense that? If you're playing the game with me right now, your salivary glands have kicked in just a little bit, and there's a little more saliva in your mouth than what was there before. What am I saying with all that? What's the point of this? The point of this is there is no lemon. There's a picture of a lemon. There's a story about a lemon. There's some thought about a lemon, but it created a physical response in your body. Folks, this is exactly how emotion works. I mean, this is a good way to describe how emotions are. Emotions are a chemical electrical response in our bodies based on thought. If you can see the connection between thought and emotion, this is going to go a long way into helping you learn how to own your emotions and to work better with your emotions. And I think that probably illustrates that connection in a great way. We're going to look at another thing here. We're going to talk about snow. We certainly had some last week, some snow and ice. I want you to think about the concept or the idea of snow, or the last snowstorm last week, or snow in your past. I even want you to go back to your childhood about snow. How do you feel about snow? We're talking about emotions this morning. Well, I'm going to give you one picture here. This is the picture that comes to some people's mind when they think about snow. Going down that interstate with the ice under the tires, hard to see. I'd say the emotions there are probably not the best. I'm not feeling so good about snow if I have to go out in the snow and travel and drive. Now, there may be some exceptions to that. There may be some truck drivers that see it as a challenge. They say, I'm great at the snow. It makes them feel really good because they can handle it. But I would think most of us don't really look forward to that scene. Here's another scene. It's a little girl and her sister, and they've got a little cat and they've got a dog in the sled. And that probably brings back some thoughts of all of us to our childhood. And I hope that when you were a child, maybe when you were younger, you really enjoyed snow. Maybe some of you as adults, if you're saying, if I don't have to deal with the driving piece and all the problems that come with it, I love snow. I'm dreaming of a white Christmas. Looking out the front window and seeing that snowfall come down brings many people into a warm feeling of comfort and fun and joy and a day off school and all the things that go along with that. So here's my question for you this morning. Can snow make you feel good, and can snow make you feel bad? And I'm going to say absolutely not. Because how can you feel fearful and upset and depressed and anxious about snow? And how can you feel happy, anticipatory, excited, joyful about snow? If snow created those feelings, it would be the same. It's not the snow that's creating the emotion. It's the response based on the thought you're having. Folks, if you can get this morning, you will have gotten the value of this morning, that your emotions are biochemical responses to your thoughts. And some of those thoughts are very real and very cognizant and very conscious. Some of those thoughts are memories. Some of those thoughts are things that are very maybe suppressed or underneath the surface. But the fact is, our emotions are biochemical responses to our thinking. Now, I know there's dysfunction and people have problems and they can have emotions and they're not coming from any kind of thought they're having. That's the exception. We're talking about day-to-day reasonable people that are working, that we're working with and that we're than ourselves. So let's go to this next thought. I'm going to talk about the train. Now, I worked hard on this PowerPoint, so I want people to appreciate it. But here comes the train. What do we learn from this train? Well, very simply, the lesson from this train is that thought in this model is the engine, and action and emotion are the cars that follow behind. And again, it's just another way to look at the same concept that we just talked about. That as I have certain thoughts, that influences what I do and how I feel. We're going to see in a moment here that feeling and action also influence what we think. But if we're going to change the direction of our train, trying to change that by changing our emotion is a very difficult thing to do. I think we really need to consider the fact of, if I'm having an emotional struggle, if I'm having a meltdown, or I'm having a team meltdown, or we're having too much drama, what is the thought that I need to engage to change the direction? Because when I try to run my life from the caboose, it derails. Thought needs to be the head car. So just another way to look at the snow slide and even the lemon side, that the thought is what pulls emotion and action. Now we're going to look at a balloon. Just giving you some concepts, because this is one way to learn things. Here comes the balloon, and here's what I want you to see as you watch that picture. A hot air balloon is designed to go up. Apart from any hindrances, apart from any problems, any winds, high winds or whatever, a balloon filled with hot air will rise. That's what it's designed to do. I'm going to propose something to you. A healthy human being is designed to be happy. I can prove it kind of by looking at very, very young children. If very, very young children are well fed and they have plenty of rest and they're dry, they're happy. Now they can click it on and click it off in a second and be very upset and emotionally out of control. But once that need or that problem is met, their natural state is curiosity and happiness and high levels of creativity, high levels of emotion and curiosity. Why, as adults, are we not up most of the time? Why do we feel like it's a struggle to be happy and creative and loving and joyful and light? Well, it's because of this. Here come the sandbags. If you want to pull a balloon down, which naturally goes up, you need to weigh it down with some sandbags. In my model, the sandbags are your past experiences, your past regret, your past memories. By the way, those memories are not accurate. They've been retold so many times and reinvented that they've become exaggerated and reduced. We don't even have the facts. In fact, your past no longer exists except between your ears. It's in that biochemical place in your brain. One of those functions up there is where it is there, and there's a use for it. I mean, we have no life without our past. Our past is really our life is mainly between our ears. So a 2-year-old doesn't have a lot of a past. And a 2-year-old really isn't probably sitting and contemplating his last week. He is very present with the now, here and now. And folks, if we could drop our sandbags of the past, if we could learn to use our prefrontal cortex, that CEO of the brain, to say, I'm going to let that thought go. I'm going to let that pass. I'm not going to give that any credence. Our balloon would start to rise. What's the other thing that holds a balloon down? Well, some tethers or some ropes. I call that your future. What is fear? What is anxiety? What is nervousness? Is it not just a biochemical response of emotion based on precognition, thinking about what's going to occur? False expectations appearing real is what I've heard for fear. Anxiety is always about some anticipation, negative anticipation about the future. You don't know what the future is. You can guess what the future is. It seems that most people tell the worst possible scenario of the future. Many people are very pessimistic. And when we have pessimistic prognostications about the future, we create emotions and chemical responses called anxiety and stress and worry. Folks, the anxiety, stress, and worry in your life is not helping anyone. It's not helping you. It's not helping your team. It's suppressing that prefrontal cortex. It's shutting down that logical thinking. It's hindering progress. Just as your guilt and your past and your regrets and that past thinking is a sandbag to your natural state, so all this anxious thinking about the future are tethers that are holding that balloon down. It's time for us to become an owner and not a victim. It's time for us to rise up and own these things. Now, I understand we're human, and some days we're going to do better than others, and I can be certainly okay with that because I'm okay with myself. But the bottom line is, if you have problems with you, if you're down quite often, and you're stressed out to the max quite often, and you're anxious quite often, and you're depressed quite often, and you're down, and you're moody, and you're grumpy, it's time for you to own it. It's time for you to say, I've got thoughts and I've got thinking in my mind that need to be addressed. I'm going to really let you see that unhindered, your balloon will go up. Your natural state will be free of all that if you just let some things go. In fact, let's look at another one here. I want you to look at this called the snow globe. The snow globe. Maybe, I hope all of you have seen one of these devices. It's a little artistic device that has a nice little peaceful, kind winter scene usually in the middle. And when you shake it, all this snow swirls around. Kind of like our emotions on a stressful, active day. When you that sense of overwhelm, that sense of anxiety, that sense of being stressed out, it's all swirling like a snow globe. Here's the question. What do you need to do to get rid of the swirl? What do you need to do to get rid of the swirl in a snow globe? The answer is nothing. If you will stop and allow this to settle, what will happen is the scene will become very clear. Well, Dave, that sounds great. How do you do that? You breathe, you take some deep breaths, you sit down, and you cease activity, and you allow all this swirl in your mind to settle. Some call it meditation. That's fine. Maybe you even focus a little bit on your breath. But you learn how to become mindful. This is being an owner of our emotions. This is not allowing the emotions to run the train. Put the emotions back as the caboose. This is understanding that those emotions are just responding to our thought and our thinking. And what we need to do is allow our thoughts and our thinking to just settle. What if I've got so many thoughts and thinking and things in my head that I can't hardly stand it? They're clouds, folks. If you wait long enough, a cloud will pass. It's letting go and letting it drift and letting it go. Maybe you need to get somebody to help you with that. And we're going to give you a practical tool here at the end. And to what do we do once we get some clarity and we let this snow settle? But I want you to see this. If you will take some deep breaths and just get very centered in the present moment, you'll see some things very clearly. And I think it's slowing down to get really clear so we can be effective and efficient. So we're going to talk about this thing called The Work. It's by a lady named Byron Katie. You can Google that or YouTube that and find some really interesting information. She offers a lot of her philosophy for free online, and it's based on cognitive behavioral therapy, if you want to put a label on it, which talks about the relationship between thought, feeling, and action. We're talking this morning about how to deal effectively with our emotions, how to make them our friends. So that would be the feeling on this little chart. So the question I would have for you, does feeling affect thought? And you would say, absolutely. Does your thought affect feeling? I would hope after this morning you would absolutely agree with that. Does our thought control what we do, our action? Well, sure it does. Does how we act affect the way we think? Sure it does. Does how we act affect the way we feel? Yeah. Does how we feel affect the way we act? I would say yes. And so what we have here is a triangle to just represent, we can put little arrows on the ends of those segments and say that all these things are in a dynamic with each other. And so if we're going to own our emotions, if we're going to own our feelings and really make them our friends, we're going to need to just trying to work directly with emotion is very frustrating sometimes. I think we do need to get clear and define it. That's what that wheel was all about. Once we get some clarity about what are the feelings here that we want to work on, I really want to say, how am I acting to create that feeling? And specifically, how am I acting, which causes me to think a certain way to create that feeling? And what thought is bringing that feeling forth? If my mouth is watering, what's the thought about a lemon that's causing that? What are my memories that I'm allowing to surface, or even subconsciously? It's just getting clear by letting that snow globe settle to get really clear about what I'm thinking and to get those thoughts objective, get them out of my head and onto a piece of paper. So I'm going to bring this down to something very specific. Let's say that I'm really irritated with my boss and it's causing a lot of resentment and frustration. If I'm going to coach you or work with you, I'm going to ask you to get really clear on what is the thought that you're having about your boss. What is that critical thought you're having? My thought is my boss doesn't care about me. My boss ignores me and blows me off. My boss doesn't respect me. She doesn't take me seriously, and therefore she disrespects me and she doesn't care about me. So I would say, as the coach, so the counselor, what is it you're thinking about your boss? My boss doesn't like me and doesn't respect me. Okay, now we're going to do this work from Byron Katie, and this is the tool I'm going to give you today of what to do. Once I get everything calmed down, we get clarity about that thought, then what are we going to do here? We're going to ask this question: is that thought true? Well, yeah, I think it's true. I think the evidence is there. Can you know it's absolutely true? Is it true all the time? 100%. What you're telling me is your boss doesn't care about you at all. Well, no, that isn't true completely. So let's first of all put this thought on trial. See, I'm not attacking you. I'm attacking your thought. I'm getting your thought outside of you into an objective place, and we're going to ask it, is it really valid? And what we're going to find out, folks, is that there is no monster under the bed, that my boss really doesn't not care for me 100%. There may be some moments or some strains in the relationship, but the fact is, to say my boss 100% doesn't care about me, doesn't like me, and doesn't respect me, is that true? Can we absolutely know it's true? If you get honest with those two questions, no, I can't absolutely know that's true 100% of the time, all the time. In fact, that's just my belief, keyword. That's just what I'm thinking. It's my story about my boss. And it's not my boss that's causing my anxiety and my resentment. It's what I'm thinking about my boss. It's the thought about my boss that's causing the feeling. It's my thought about snow that causes the feeling. It's my thought about a lemon that causes the reaction. The emotion is just an indicator light about thought. It is not the stimulation that's causing the problem. It's my processing in my brain of the stimulant. If you're getting this, you're starting to get excited, because when I start to question the thought that's causing this reaction and this response, now we're going to get somewhere. I'm using my prefrontal cortex, the logical part of my brain, to put these emotional thoughts on trial. Now I'm going to ask this third question. How do I react when I think that thought? So when you think about your boss being uncaring and not caring about you and too busy for you and disrespecting you, how do you react when you have those thoughts? Well, I get resentful and I get upset and I get disrespectful and I start to feel demoralized and I feel depressed, and so you start to see those lights that are coming on because you're having those thoughts in response to your boss, what you think about your boss. And then finally, this is an amazing question. Who would you be without that thought? In other words, if you didn't have those tethers and those sandbags about this relationship, what would your balloon do? Well, I probably would be a little bit neutral. In fact, when I really think about it, I kind of like my boss. In fact, probably what it is I'm a little disappointed that she doesn't spend a little more time with me. So who would I be without the thought that they don't care? Well, let me take you one more step, one final step. Turn that thought around. So how would you turn that thought around? Well, let's consider, all we're doing is considering, let's consider the very opposite of that. My thought, the opposite of that would be my boss really does care about me. My boss basically does respect me. Is there any truth to those words? Well, yeah, there's some truth to that. When you have that thought, how do you react when you have that thought? Wow, I react a lot differently. My emotions change, and even my thinking starts to change. What about, let's turn that thought around and think about this. Maybe I disrespect my boss. Maybe I don't care about my boss. Maybe I've not been kind to her. Maybe I haven't paid much attention to her. Is that true? Well, yeah, that's got some truth to it. How do you react when you have that thought? I think maybe I need to work on myself too. Maybe I need to go have a conversation. Maybe we need to create a connection. Maybe I need to let these sandbags and these tethers go so that our balloon can go up and we can be emotionally back in a good place. Can that happen? I'm going to tell you that it can. So here's how we're going to bring this together this morning. I've got these final questions here for our morning session. What have you learned and what steps will you take? What curiosity has been stimulated in your thinking this morning? How might you be starting to see your emotional dilemma and drama a little bit differently? How are you maybe taking some ownership of your feelings and saying, I need to do some work on myself and on my thinking? Maybe I need to just let some of these thoughts be clouds and just let them pass. Maybe I don't need to do anything and let things become clear and then I'll know what to do. I don't know what you're thinking this morning, but if you take what you're thinking and you take about what you're learning today and you put it into some next steps, that's when things occur. That's when things happen. And I want to give you 3 possible next steps that you can take with me if you want my help. Here's 3. Step 1, request today's slides. So you'll have, I'll send the PDF. You can print it out, put it in front of you. It'll be a reminder of these thoughts, and I'll email you that on request. The second thing you could do, I've got some related handouts, some articles I've written and some other content. That emotional competence from Daniel Coleman on emotional intelligence. I've got that 1-page outline from the book. I'd be glad to email you the PDF of that. That wheel of emotions that we looked at, I've got that PDF. Be glad to email that to you. And then I've got 3 different articles, 1-page articles, that will just again help you be reminded of today's session. Because I think most of this starts with the change of thinking. We've talked about how thinking in our prefrontal cortex is the CEO, and I think you need to get the concept going, and then we start to apply it in the action. And the combination of the action and the thinking is what changes the feeling. And so here's 3 articles that can change your thinking. Cheery or Grumpy by Dave Beam. Rainy Days and Mondays. We've all heard the old Karen Carpenter song, Rainy Days and Mondays always get me down. It questions that whole philosophy that's been placed in our brain by that song. And then the balloon, which really just is kind of a summary about that slide we saw on the balloon. So if you want any of those materials, just email me and request the package of handouts. I will send those to you. I'll email them right back to you free of charge. And the third thing, if you'd love to have a session with me, $350 value. I've just been offering this to people that come to these presentations. For $49, we can have an hour on Zoom together, and I'll take you through that work. You can bring a specific situation to me, and we will actually coach through how to help you be a better leader, a better manager, a better person. And that's what we have this morning. So thank you for tuning in. I appreciate some feedback from all of you about what you thought about today, what you liked, and maybe anything that you would like to see improved, maybe some things that weren't quite so helpful. All of that feedback is helpful to me. I take none of it personally. It's just a way for me to continually do better with this. So with that, we'll sign off. We're 3 or 4 minutes early, so I'll give you back a little bit of your morning. And thank you all for attending this morning.
Thanks, Dave.